Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of how to create a custom level in Sonic Adventure 2. Today we'll be going over a new alternate way of adding and setting objects in our own custom levels. Now, in the previous episode, we had gone over how to use a tool known as SA Level, which is a 3D visualization that allows you to walk through your level and place items as you go. But actually, since that last episode, I've been hard at work creating a brand new tool that will allow you to work more closely with the levels that you're creating in Blender, and also has some nice extra features that'll hopefully explain items better and make them easier to work with. So in the description for this video, there should be a download link. So go ahead and download the app if you haven't. And we're going to be using this new tool called the Modern Set Editor. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And once you open it up, you should be met with this intro screen that basically explains what to expect going through this app. So here we have two options. So we can either create a file or open one. And we have some notes here to look out for. Just some of these right off the top, it's important to know that each level has its own separate object list. So exactly the way that it works in Sonic Adventure 2, there are some objects that are very specific to Cityscape, and there's other objects that are very specific to Metal Harbor. So the app will handle this for us, but that's just something important to know. Another thing that's important to know is that Blender coordinates are different from in-game coordinates. So we'll see this later. It's not going to be something that's, too crazy to deal with, as we'll see later, but just something to keep in mind. Something else, too, is that some of the objects that we'll be dealing with actually have some special properties that may mean something different than how it might be used regularly. So in these cases, there should be an info blurb that will pop up and explain what exactly the property does. So just keep an eye out for properties with this I tag. We're going to see that later. And something else too is that hex values are supported. So a little later when we're starting to mess with our objects, if at any case we wanted to use a hex value, or there's a special property where you need to use a hex value, all you have to do is put an X in the front of your value and it'll be translated to hex. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new file. And here it'll just ask me for some information about my level to get started. So I'm going to choose Sonic Adventure 2. And then from this stage list, I'm going to choose Cityscape. And you'll notice when I choose that, the file name will be set for me automatically. And this is very important because if the set file name isn't exact, then it's not going to work properly because the name needs to be exact in order to override the file that already exists in the game. And so I know with previous tools, we had to make sure that it's exact. But thankfully, this tool actually handles it for us. But if I want to change the name manually, I can do so right there. But I'll just leave it as it is right now. Some other options we have is we can choose whether to keep our set file format as normal, or we can go into decorative mode. And so in Sonic Adventure 2, we have an S version and a U version. Now, it doesn't really matter. I think I'm going to stick with normal, but depending on how you want to organize things, maybe you can put decorative objects in the decorative file and maybe, more important objects in the S file. But I'm just going to stick with the S for now. And we also have the option of setting this for 2-player or hard mode, but I'm just going to leave it empty as now, so this will just work right out of the box with a standard level. And once I'm done setting all that stuff, I'm just going to hit Create File. And once I'll do that, we'll be met with the main screen. And so here you'll see we have a whole bunch of options to choose from. We have these 4 main buttons that kind of handle all of our objects. So if I hit Add, it'll add some of these objects. If I hover over them, you'll see this X where I can delete some. If I go over down here to the objects themselves and I click on them, you'll notice that they expand and they'll reveal all the properties I can set. X and, Y, Z, and, you have the rotations. I can even set the objects over here. So if I click on this is actually a select menu. So I can go ahead and look through this. And these are going to be all the objects that you can use for this level. So remember, objects are specific for your level. Something nice about this too is it kind of works as a search box. So if I type in maybe SPR for spring, you'll notice it shows up first. And even if I finish the word, it'll just set it for me automatically. So that's pretty nice. So, that's how you use the objects over here in general. You'll notice here we have some of those special properties I was talking about, where, you'll have some certain options that you can use for the spring in this case. You'll see, we have this variable one, which allows us to set how long we want to lock the player's controls for. This one also has to do with spring power. But that's about how you use the objects. Now you notice on this top right corner here, we have some options to sort. So if I add some more objects and maybe I introduce some new types. So for example, hunter, and maybe I'll add another option. How about these spinning spike balls? You'll notice by using these sort buttons over here, I can kind of sort the objects in any manner that I want. So we have time created, which is basically, how I've added it, or, if you're reading a file, how, the objects got read, nothing special. We have this type, sort by type, which is basically kind of alphabetical, A through Z. So we got H, R, S, S. These are kind of the types up here. So I said, okay, sort by name, sort by type, same thing. We have sort by category. And so you'll notice as we're going through this drop down, we'll see these kind of categories where we have, collectibles and enemies. So if I sort by category, all the enemies will come together, all the collectibles will come together. I named this, I believe spring is in, interactive objects. And we can also sort by X, Y, and Z. But you can play around with that in your own time. And over here on the top left, you'll notice we have a very important option that we're going to be using in this tutorial, and that is known as the coordinate style. And so again, some important distinctions between in-game versus Blender. When we're working in Blender, the Z-axis is up and down. But in-game, it's the Y-axis that's up and down. So I can set whether I would like to work with Blender coordinates versus game coordinates right up here. So we're going to be working with Blender today. So that's about how you use the editor. Now on how you can use it in adding custom levels when you're making a level in Blender, what I suggest is when you're creating a level in Blender, and you can ignore that, that was from my last failed attempt at recording this. We have here a very simple level with a couple of loop-de-loops, maybe some platforms, and even a small ramp over here. And so what I would like to do, you may have already saw it, but I would like to add a spring right on the edge of this platform, and it's gonna kind of point out a little bit. So if I were using SA level, I'd have to load up my level, maybe even the textures, and I'd have to walk around to it. But with this new modern set editor, what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna insert a cube in my scene. I'm actually gonna stick with cone. Because when it comes to springs are pointed. We want them to point in a specific direction. So, cones, they have that point. And so something nice about using the modern set editor is I don't have to go jump into another tool and walk around. I can just kind of play around with objects in Blender and then kind of plug them in to the app. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to spawn in a cone, and this will kind of represent my spring. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to scale it up just a little bit. If you notice the object properties on the right, I'm going to set this to about 5. That's a good size to set most of your objects. So for example, item boxes, springs, maybe even enemies. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock on to my axes, which will just make it easier to move these items in a more precise way. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to move this cone right next to that platform. I'm going to move it again. So now it's set in the X and Y. That looks about right. And now I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to move this down by a little bit. So I'm going to rotate this so it points out a little bit. Now I kind of want it to point where this is going, right there. That's about right. Okay. And so, using the modern set editor, you can kind of visualize how your objects will kind of look in your level. And so, that looks pretty good, I would say. That looks pretty good. That's pretty good set. So now what I'm going to do is once I've placed the object in my level, I'm going to go ahead and look at these properties on the right. And all you have to do from here is basically just plug in the properties you see here into the modern set editor, hit save, and you should be good to go. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to look at these properties, open my modern set editor. I'm going to go ahead and type in spring. And looking at the X, Y, and Z, I'm going to make sure I'm set to Blender coordinates. Okay, so it's a good thing I caught that. I'm set to Blender coordinates. X is -22, Y is 49. And again, you don't have to be so exact with this. I think the game at most supports only like 2 decimal points, but you probably don't even need that. Let me see, that's my recording window. 49. And then let's see what else. 20. 22, -49, 20. For the rotation, we have about 50. So I'll put 50. And over here, I have some options. So these are the 2 important ones over here. This one I kind of played around with. It's not too important for the spring. So this one, I'm going to set this to 30. So the player, once they hit the spring, they'll launch up. They won't be able to move for a little bit, and then they can move once they've hit the top. And then here we have a multiplier, the spring's power. And I remember when I was playing around with this, I'm like, oh, I don't know what numbers to start with. So maybe I'll put 10. 10 launched me super far. So I'm gonna put a small number. I'm just gonna stick with 1.2 to keep these simple. So I'm gonna put a spring right there. And maybe something else I'll do is I'll add in a hunter as an enemy. So I'm gonna put the hunter probably on top of this loop-de-loop. I think that's a cool spot to put a hunter. Let me make this scale 5. I want to make sure it's flush with the ground. Lock it to X. Go on top right here. That looks about right. Yeah, okay. And then I'm going to go and add a hunter. I'm still sorted. I forgot about that. Hunter. Let's see. So we have 79. We have 83, and then we have 65, basically 66, but it's whatever. And we have some options here that'll kind of explain what to expect. So for this one, and by the way, all these options will start at 0. So if you see an option that says, oh, you should probably put 0, I'll put 0. I'll just leave it as is. So on gun types, 10s, 1s is the amount of bullets to fire at a time. So for this one, I'll put maybe 10. I believe how the hunter works in particular is he shoots a set of, I guess you define it over here. So a set of 10 bullets, and then he takes a break for, I think, like, I don't know, a minute or so. And then he shoots the 10 again. Actually, yeah, this is probably, time in frames between firings. I'm going to set that to 30. In hunting stages, so this is for knuckle stages or rouge stages where you're hunting for the emeralds, you can choose to hide an emerald into the hunter. I'm not going to do it for this tutorial, but this is how you do it. And you notice how it says FF? That's a hex value. So you would do X, and then I guess over here it's talking about whatever ID. So I guess what you would do is you would hit add, and then under collectibles you should see emerald. Yeah, you actually see it for Cityscape. That's interesting because I don't believe there's any emeralds in Cityscape. I guess I'll have to double check that later. Okay. Anyways. Oh no. You know what? That's one of those things where it's solid throughout all the levels. There are a certain subset of objects that are supported in every level, so that's fine actually. But yeah, I guess yeah, you would choose emerald, and then one of these options is the ID. Yeah, so you do ID, you put a hex. So I'm going to do ID 40, and then if I wanted to have this hunter reveal it, I'll put the same ID here. So yeah. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get rid of this emerald. And then over here, 0 is activating, 1 is moving. So for me, most of the time, you're probably going to want 0. I guess the other option is like number 7 or something, dropping, or 6. Yeah, 6 is dropping. But I'm going to stick with 0 for now. Just keep things simple. Here's the speed of the bullets. I don't know if it's in frames per second or frames per unit or whatever. You can play around with some of these values to kind of get it right. And then over here, this is kind of the vision of the hunter. So I'm just going to leave it as it is base. I might make that just 10 because it says 10 plus some base value. So that's me adding a hunter. And then one last thing I'd like to do is maybe I'll add in an item box just for fun. So let me go ahead. I can use this same cube. No one's stopping me. And I'll put that right in front of the loop-de-loop. And I'll notice that 77, 22, 4. So let me go over here. 77, 22, 4. Item box 77, 22, 4. This one, I can kind of choose over here what items I want. So you'll see over here, the blurb is very helpful in understanding what these variables do. For me, I want 20 rings. So reading through this blurb, I see 4 is for 20 rings. So I'll put 4. And then for this one, this has to do with how the logo looks inside, but I don't care about that. So now once we've done that, I'm making sure I'm on Blender coordinates. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And once I'll save, it'll ask me, all right, where would you like to put this? I'm just going to put it on my desktop for now. And we'll get a notification saying we're done. And so here's the file right here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my level mod. So again, watch the other tutorials if you haven't already to see how this works, how to set it up. But here you'll notice in the My Level Mod folder under the GDPC, here's where all my level files are. I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag this set file we just made into here and go ahead and replace. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go open the mod manager to start up my mod. So I'm going to go ahead and debug. So this is kind of like the fast track into my level. I'm going to choose Cityscape. That's what my level is set at right now to replace. And I'm going to hit play. And when we hit play, we should see everything in order. So we'll see my item box is right here. I'm going to go ahead and hit that. I got my spring over here. And then if I go up here, we should see the hunter. And he's going to start shooting at me. Let's see if I can go get him. Okay. I might have, maybe I might have to tweak that spring a little bit. But now you guys can, play around with your levels and have some fun with them. So by this point, we have enough tutorials where you know how to put a level together with, geometry and textures. We have a tutorial going over some basic tips on creating, things like this loop-de-loop or ramps. We have tools, a tutorial on how to make splines. So, there's a lot available out there. So, now, feel free to play around with your levels. Again, if you have any questions at all, feel free to join the XHash Discord. And that's about it. That's about all I have to share for the level. Something cool I can show you guys, though, is how the modern set editor looks like with a whole bunch of objects. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and clear all these objects. And I'm actually going to open up a file for you guys. So what I'm going to do, let me make this smaller. I have over here, you see this set number 2? That's what Cityscape is normally. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag and drop that in there. That should work, right? Yeah, okay. And then we'll have all this stuff filled out for us already, so that's pretty nice. Drag and drop will do that for you. And when I open the file, we'll notice all these objects are here. Wow, there's so many. So if there's something specific that I want to point out, I can sort by X, I can sort by Y, category, so you'll see all these colors are together. Yeah, look at that. And then type, of course, which is like A through Z. So it's all yours to play around with. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it helps you. And I hope you have a nice day. All right.